will go when the rent climbs high and the income stays the same. But I'm begging on justice for the common man to reclaim his name. Wonder where the people will go when the rent climbs high and the income stays the same. But I'm begging on justice for the common man to reclaim his name.
It must be transformed. Tonight, we are here to transform fear into love, and the theme is justice. Are you ready? Yeah. You know what? Can I get a special round of applause? That was an original song by the Alchemists that we just heard. And he insists that we put by the Alchemists, but Professor Daylor did write the music and the lyrics. Thank you. Okay, so normally we would do like a nice sweet meditation, ease you in, deliver you the theme, and then I'd be getting into my sermon, but tonight, no! We're dropping you right in. Is that okay? Alright, you'll see why. To be sick and to be made well again is the ultimate justice. This is my thesis. This is what I've decided. There is a plague infecting the world right now. I'm sick. Most of the people I know are sick. The culture is sick, and the world is sick. And the sickness I am talking about is the result of unconscious behavior and unintegrated shadow. And I am talking about shadow and the Jungian sense of the word. If you've never seen my sermon about shadow called Feed Both Wolves, it's fantabulous. You can find it on our YouTube channel, which you should subscribe. 13 minutes. The shadow is like my jam. So I've talked about it a lot before, if you've been to Alchemists. Now, there are two main problems with the majority of the population walking around with unintegrated shadow, basically asleep to ourselves. First of all, that which we reject and suppress in ourselves, we project onto other people, and then we attract those people into our lives in order to show us that we have fallen asleep to something in ourselves. And second, we manifest illness, physical and emotional pain, drama, chaos, destruction, and failure as a result of behaviors that we have no idea we're even doing. Is this starting to hit a little bit? And the worst part is we're fooling ourselves into not only believing that we don't have these qualities, while simultaneously believing ourselves to be the innocent victims to those people who clearly do have those qualities. And we repeat these victim stories over and over and over, and we feel trapped. The only way out of a victim story is to see the way in which you are a perpetrator. And the only way to heal drama and pain is you have to learn to see your own toxicity. Yay! Now's your chance to leave if you want to leave. So I follow a local healer named Timothy Gay on Instagram. He was out there in the lobby promoting an upcoming workshop. He's fantastic, practices something called theta healing, which I find very interesting. And he posted this the other day. One of the most challenging aspects of the healing journey is acknowledging ways in which you were toxic. Without that, you won't know how to be fully present. Wow. Okay, so how do we wake up to our role in this epidemic when we are all deathly afraid of our own darkness, we're afraid of being wrong, and we're so afraid of being the bad guy that we constantly make sure that we are the victim in every story? How do we wake up when the ego has designed the game in such a way that you literally cannot see your own part in it? You have to manifest other people to show you. So the scariest part of waking up is realizing that a vast portion of your own behavior is compulsive and unconscious. And if there's one thing I've learned recently, it's that the smarter, more cunning, and often more spiritual you are, the easier it is to deceive yourself. A lot of your attitude, mood, personal agenda, and behavior is driven by your unconscious self, and the person you are most fooling is you. That's right. So how do you get out of a cage inside which you can't see the bars? How to wake up out of self-deception? 1, this is my recipe, okay? I've been working on this for you guys. 1, you have to decide you want to wake up, first of all. If you've made it past 1, great. 2, you have to learn to see your shadow. 3, you have to learn to look at the evidence around you that might indicate you're not as awake as you think. 4, you have to create a network of feedback and accountability. And 5, you have to try. Some people do make it all the way to 4 and then they're like, forget it. I don't want to try. So my story of awakening to my shadow begins 2.5 years ago when my comedy troupe split up. It was a very traumatic turned loving experience for most people, but because the universe was clearly prepared for this whole thing, it made sure that not only did I have a real love coach who had just entered my life at that time, but I had also just started a 2-year shamanic training program. And if it weren't for those teachers and those tools, I don't think I may have made it out of that cave alive. Because when you first start coming out of Plato's cave, it hurts, right? It's painful. I experienced an accelerated course in seeing my shadow because not only did I have the wreckage around me, right? The failed troupe after a decade of playing together, as a symptom, I also had the fresh scratching of old wounds that I thought were definitely healed. And I had 9 people who had known me for a decade who were willing to sit with me on multiple occasions for hours and tell me behaviors of mine that were mostly unconscious to me. So I got to sit and listen to stories of my own toxicity for hours. Over the next 2.5 years, I dug deeper into this dark rabbit hole. When I wasn't moving into blame toward others for my behaviors, I was self-flagellating. Both are dysfunctional extremes that never, ever serve your healing process. It wasn't until I finally surrendered to the truth that not only do I suck sometimes, but we we all suck sometimes, that I was finally able to start integrating the shadow. Because here's the thing, your ego will go to great lengths to prevent you from ever seeing your own toxicity and from ever seeing the ways that you were a perpetrator. But sometimes the message gets through, and then your ego will go into blame or shame in order to keep you from actually doing anything about it. So, tricky ego. So today, I am here to confess to you all the darkest parts of myself. Confession, I believe, is the first step toward integration of the shadow, and integration of the shadow is the only way to heal the shadow. You cannot suppress it. That only gets you further from yourself. So I believe confession is the first step toward integration because it literally takes what was in the darkness and it brings it into the light. But there is one important thing when practicing the fragile art of confessing your shadow, and that is you must remember to maintain your levity. That was a wink if you couldn't see. I winked like this. Okay. So many brave shadow hunters have come before me, but many people have not actually made it to the stage of confession. And of the shadow hunters who did make it to confession, very few of them made it out of that stage without shame. And that is where the world is sick. And it's time for us to get well. And in order to do that, we must start owning the parts of ourselves that are toxic and the parts that we play in perpetrating this toxicity. But we must remember to maintain our cosmic giggle while we do it. And thus I shall present to you the darkest parts of myself via PowerPoint presentation. Because there is nothing sillier than a badly designed, poorly animated PowerPoint presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, the shadow side of Jessica Levity, a confession, transition up. Notice the Comic Sans font. Okay, I brought note cards for this. Are you guys ready for the first confession? Okay, bring it on. I am controlling. Shocking. I thought I would open up with something obvious. So, where do I even start with this one? Did anyone see the murder mystery we did for Our Town in July? The original? Thank you. I played the role of control, a personification of control, a part which I literally wrote. People were coming up to me after, they were like, "You are so funny, we had no idea you were such an actress, we've never seen you do something theatrical, you're usually just like doing a sermon," and I was like, y'all, I was not acting. I was born for that role. Okay, so this is a trait that obviously serves me well in some capacities, like as a manager or a leader, or director or producer, but it does not serve me in situations like when I am trying to make all of my friends sit in a perfect circle when we are having a party because the awkward rhombus shape just isn't doing it. Shut up. It doesn't serve me well when I am side seat driving because my husband insists that Neil Road is the best way to get to 395 South from Midtown when clearly it is Moana is the fastest way to 395 South, or Plum. Okay, maybe I should dig a little deeper. I control the energy in the room with my mood. If I don't like what's happening, I can change the temperature control with my mood, and that is very controlling. I can control your reaction to things with my tone. I can control with a sigh or an eye roll, and my favorite form of control is expectation. Creating expectations is very controlling, and you'll know it because when you fail them, I will let you know. People are like, no, actually, you can have expectations. No, you can make requests. But expectations are a form of control to get people to do what you want. And when they break your script, you let them know. Okay. I feel like I could have dug deeper on that one, but I'm bypassing. All right, well, I've got a lot of shadow to confess. Okay, confession number 2. I give in order to get. Oh, this is a subtle one, and it's hard to describe because it manifests in different forms. I never realize I'm doing this one, it only shows up later. So one form that I give in order to get, which is an unloving act, it's very toxic, is called scorekeeping. So in my mind, I might do things for you or give things to you, and it seems like it's coming from a place of benevolence, and I might even think it's coming from a place of benevolence, but we find out that it's not, because then when you fail to reciprocate that same thing back to me, I am disappointed. Because apparently I was only giving to you in order to get something, and when you fail me, I will bust out the scorecard and I will let you know. I am a better friend than you. I am a better alchemist than everyone. I do all of the things. Here's the scorecard. That's one way that I give in order to get. Oh, and this one's really big for me. It also manifests in the fact that I tie my value into what I can do for people. So, over the years, I developed a lot of various different kinds of talents, and the reason for that is because I find value in how I can provide for people. I think that I was probably a very lonely kid, and I didn't really have a lot of friends, and so I noticed that I started to get friends when I was useful. So now, 25 years later, I have all these different talents, and I show up and I give these talents in order to get value. I give in order to get, and the most powerful in my way face that I learned this toxic behavior is because literally my first thought after my troop split up was, I can't believe I'm gonna say this, how could they leave me? Think about all of the things I do for them. Yeah, so that's a big one for me. Okay, moving on, great. Remember the giggle! It's so weird, the juxtaposition of like all this darkness, and then I'm like, psych, swipe left! Okay, well, this next one is like, I feel like we're getting darker as we go. Is everyone okay? Alright. I self-victimize for pity, power, and attention. Oh, okay, when I say self-victimize, I don't mean physically, like I'm not self-harming. No. You guys, the way that I self-victimize is a lot more hidden and psychic and insidious. You have to remember I am an actor, okay? And I am mystical and spiritual, and so the ways that I self-victimize are a lot sneakier and snakier, but it's so weird to laugh at that. I love it, it's alchemy. But it's still just as toxic as someone with more transparent behavior, because that's what us psychic manipulators like to believe, is that we're just above all of those more transparent manipulators. Okay, so sometimes I feign fragility in order to gain control or pity, like crying when you give me feedback about my toxic behavior. That is a form of manipulation and control to get you to stop telling me waking up hurts. Ow. Sometimes I feign fragility just because I want attention. Other times I feign fragility just because I'm lazy and I want you to help, but for some reason I feel like I need to manipulate you into helping instead of just asking. Other times I'm actually fragile, and that's a legit thing too, but most of the time it's coming from this toxic place. It also manifests, this is a weird one, in acting sickly in order to get a hit of that sweet, sweet drug known as sympathy. Right in the vein. There's a cultural belief that sympathy is a loving thing to give someone. Empathy is, but sympathy is an unloving thing to give someone, and it is a drug, and I will act sickly and fragile in order to get your sympathy, which gets me high momentarily, but is ultimately toxic. Oh, and I've just learned this about me. Sometimes I will actually attract to myself some kind of illness or some kind of accident so that it looks like it's not me who's doing it. Oh, those hippie new age bastards. I'm like, no, this really happened. I just happened to get sick. That's not my fault. But we know, as alchemists, that we are absolutely responsible for these repeated stories that we're bringing to ourselves. Okay, moving on. Oh, this is my favorite. I lack self-care. Zoom transition. I love how it came out from the depths of the void. I lack self-care. Okay, so there are things that I know that I should be doing for myself for my highest good, and I don't do them. Okay, next slide. No, just kidding. just kidding. Okay, for starters, my diet is a constant struggle for me. There's a certain way that I should be eating to be healthy, and I don't do it. I struggle with a lot of chronic pain, and I am not supposed to be eating certain foods like refined carbohydrates, sugar, and processed foods because they all add inflammation and they make my pain so much worse, and I don't do it. The single greatest thing I could be doing for myself is yoga, and I don't do it because it's painful. And then I tell myself, well, it's not self-care if it's painful. That's a lie. Let's see what else. I have only recently learned the importance of slowing down, saying no to things, having a regular practice of meditation and prayer. These are all things that I lack self-care in. Basically, there's a way that I am supposed to be living that is for my highest good, and I don't take care of myself, and that is probably the most fundamentally toxic thing that we are doing to ourselves. Okay, yay! Are you still alive?
Yeah.
Am I still alive?
I don't know.
Can you see me? I feel so naked. Okay. This next one, oh God. Okay, I'm me. I know what you guys are thinking. You're fired. I'm mean. I know what you're thinking. You're not mean. This is the thing is, the ego, when receiving feedback about the unconscious behavior, will think of all of the times that you weren't those things. I'm not saying I'm mean all the time. I'm saying that my shadow side is mean, and that somewhere along the line I have judged that as a bad quality, and I've disowned it in myself, and I have guilt about it, and thus created shadow with it. So my meanness manifests. This is feedback that I've been given, and man, I had to hear it for probably 2 years before I was like, okay. You know what it was, is I had to be around someone else who was like that before I was like, oh. Basically, what I've been told is that my energy can be dominating and bullying in a room. Yeah, that's a huge one. Oh, people are like, this explains so much. Now, I do want to say one thing is I'm also a shy introvert. People don't believe me, so sometimes I'm really freaking awkward. If you see me like at the grocery store or something, that's not me being mean. That's me being like, I don't know how to interact when I'm not in control with a microphone on stage. So yeah, my energy in a room can be dominating and bullying, and I've heard that my words can stab like knives. And ever since getting that part of me under control, here's the tricky thing about the shadow, I'm still doing it in my head. So I may have learned to control my bite, but the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what you're actually doing and what you're thinking about doing, which is why visualization and sports psychology and things like that work. The shadow and the subconscious mind don't know. So in my head, I'm still stabbing you with my words, with my righteous anger. The only thing worse than anger is righteous anger because it feels justified in itself. So I'm not mean, I'm just right. I think I proved it on that one, okay? People are like, I resonate with this too much. Next. Okay, let's move on. I am an addict. Ooh, wah, wah. I told you, they're gonna get heavier as we go. I'm telling you, the last few months have been really freaking heavy, y'all, because the way that you wake up to this is either one, people tell you your toxic behavior, or two, you manifest people into your life with these behaviors, and you learn to turn it around on yourself. And so I have been manifesting some very fun people recently. Okay, so I'm an addict. So when you're doing shadow work, you have to remember that your ego's gonna go, you're not an addict, because think about all the ways you're not one. The point is to think about how you are one. I hate this word, behoove. It would behoove you. So I was manifesting a lot of addicts into my life, and so then I was like, all right, how am I an addict? Well, I'm addicted to coffee, processed food, sugar, control, righteousness, and that really fiery, passionate feeling when you're first falling in love with someone. I'm totally an addict to that. And I know that these are all addict behaviors because sometimes I make choices that are ultimately not good for me and good for the people around me because the addiction is bigger than caring about myself or other people. That's addiction. Okay, this is my favorite one coming up next. 2 more, you guys. I'm codependent. Yay! I'm codependent because I often need other people to like me in order to feel good about myself. Being rejected is a very painful emotion for me. So that's why the heart of this journey started 2.5 years ago when I lost my true. I fear making mistakes, and I fear failure. I obsess about other people, especially if I feel jealousy or fear coming up in our relationship. I will totally obsess. I willingly take responsibility for other people's feelings. I'm a people pleaser, both from needing you to like me, but also to manipulate and control you. So if I do a bunch of good things for you, it's a lot easier to get you to do what I want later. I take things personally. That's my favorite. And I've been buried in shame, which has manifested in perfectionism. I love us perfectionists. We think it's like this whole martyr thing, like, I'm a perfectionist. No, it comes from shame and a total addiction to codependency. It's like all wrapped in and on itself. Any of you guys resonating with this? Good, I just wanted to see where my other codependents were at so that I could find you after the show. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, you guys ready for the darkest one? I need your consent before we go here because this is the darkest part of my shadow. Okay, I'm ready. Give me the cheesy transition. I am a narcissist. Yikes is right. Nobody freak out like the yikes guy. Nobody freak out. That's really on my sheet. No one freak out. This is a really, really important one for me to confess, okay? Because this, I believe, is at the heart of the plague infecting the culture in the world and our tribes right now. As much as I've been waking up to this shadow after asking myself why I kept manifesting narcissists into my life, that was a fun experience. It's been really powerful, like I said. I did the behoove test. It behooved me to see, how am I a narcissist? Now, a lot of people came to my aid, and some of you might be feeling uncomfortable. Like there's this thing that comes up when someone starts to do this work, especially so publicly, that we want to be like, no, Jess, you're not a shitty person. And it's like, no, but kind of I am. And that's the whole point, is you are too sometimes. And we need to start owning it without shame. But people want to come to my rescue and be like, you aren't those things. But sometimes I am. And a lot of people have been like, we just want to let you know, as I started coming out to people as a narcissist, they're like, just so you know, you can't really be a narcissist because a true narcissist would never be able to look at that. So, ladies and gentlemen, and that is true, a true narcissist would have no way, unless they could use it to their advantage, there's no way. So I am inventing the term, narcissist light. Some of the qualities of narcissism, but not all of the toxicity. And none of the calories. Okay, so the behoove test. I took the qualities of narcissism, and I was like, okay, so how am I these things, right? Because my ego, the second I see a quality, is gonna be like, I'm not those things, especially when you're comparing yourself to the shadow who has shown up, who is those things. You'll be like, well, mine's not like that. Remember, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. And so I was like, all right. How am I a narcissist? Well, grandiose sense of self-importance. Well, I may not believe that I'm better than everyone else like a total narcissist, but I've definitely lied and exaggerated my own importance when telling stories about myself. It's kind of something that we all do a lot, and I like to fudge details and facts a little bit, sometimes when I don't even need to. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like you'll add a couple of like, I studied theater for 5 years when it was 3, and like, why did you add the extra 2? But we all do it, and actors do it more than anyone, so watch out for those guys. But lie and fudge details, and it's like, there's like, I'm floating kind of above myself, and I'm like, I know that I just lied, but then I'm like, kind of okay with it. I'm introducing my husband, my partner, to the series Friends, and we realize like Rachel's kind of a narcissist, and in the way that she's changing herself, like every guy she dates, she tries to mimic their personality back to them. That is a totally narcissistic thing to do, and it's totally normalized in our culture because back to the codependent, you want people to like you. And so you lie and fudge details about yourself, and you have a grandiose sense of self-importance. Lives in a fantasy world. I have purposely denied people's experiences and feelings when dealing with a situation, which results in a form of gaslighting. So super toxic narcissists will straight up like know that they're lying and making you feel crazy. That is one of the main tools of a narcissist. Mine's more of like a passive gaslight. No, I don't know. I feel like it's just as toxic, where like, I don't want to be wrong. I have a fear of being wrong because I'm codependent and I'm a perfectionist. And so if we are going at it and we are arguing and ultimately I just want to be right, I'm gonna deny things that, and these are all things I don't currently do, but I'm talking in the present sense because I think it's important. I'm gonna deny your feelings about what happened and maybe fudge some details about the story so that I'm right and you're wrong. And that might leave you feeling crazy. It's essentially gaslighting. Okay, needs constant praise and admiration. This one's just 100% true. This one I'm not narcissist light. Just give me the real sugar and like there's no aspartame in this one. I would say this is the shadow side of having affirmation as your love language. So that's just who I am. Like, if I've been working on something and I show it to you, or I've just got my hair cut, or I've just put together a new outfit, and I ask you if you like it, you better be prepared. Okay, so, because I need affirmation. Constantly, and praise. Sense of entitlement. This one is so unconscious, I don't even realize it's there. It's weird when a really toxic narcissist enters your life and you're really seeing how that sense of entitlement is just so at the fundamental part of what they're doing. It's so bleh. But it's definitely there. For me, it's like the shadow side of believing that you're a child of God who deserves everything. And so I constantly have to look at that for myself because I really do believe that we are all children of God and that we get to inherit the kingdom. Sometimes when you are not integrated with your shadow on that, it comes off as a sense of entitlement, and that is dangerous to relationships and success. Super insidious, right at the bottom of all your hopes and dreams, right there. Exploits others without guilt or shame. You know, this is something that I don't do intentionally. I'm not like plotting, like I'm gonna exploit someone today. But when you're a controlling person and you're not always like conscious of your toxic behaviors, you end up exploiting people. The only difference between narcissist light and total narcissist is that I just do it with guilt and shame. Like I still have it. I don't do it without it. Thanks. Frequently demeans, intimidates, bullies, or belittles others. Okay, clearly I'm not Trump, okay? But I've been told my energy when unhappy can dominate and bully other people in a room. Am I responsible for people being intimidated by me? No. Is our culture always supportive of powerful women in positions of authority?
Absolutely.
Also no. But is there something aggressive about a vibe that I put off when I'm unhappy? Yes. And this is the part that I'm responsible for. And finally, can justify any behavior. This is the scariest trait, you guys. Like, as a surgeon, looking at the metaphysics of the shadow, this is the trait that I'm really like, how do we surgically remove this? This is the scariest trait, the most important one, because smart, quick-witted people are able to justify almost any behavior. And y'all, I am a professional improviser. I am literally just really good at justifying absolutely any crazy thing that happens on stage. And it happens as quick as a neuron fires. It is this quality that puts us back to sleep, away from a dysfunctional behavior that we may need because I've justified it as acceptable, my ego puts it away as totally okay, and despite its consequences. So this justification is what I believe is at the heart of our plague. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I feel that I have sufficiently proven that I have a dark side, and she is crying. Okay, so my theory is that by confessing, I have started the integration process, and by integrating rather than rejecting and projecting, I can stop manifesting people into my life that need to show me these behaviors. Do you think that God heard me? But my reasons for sharing this today were not totally self-centered, no. Not only am I hoping that I have inspired you all to look at your own darkness and even take responsibility for the lessons showing up in your life, but also, y'all, we need to save the world. We are sick. We as a culture are so unintegrated with our shadow that we have manifested mean, lying, narcissistic leaders and entitled ways of living that are literally killing the planet. If you broaden your look at the definition of narcissism, you see that actually modern day American culture is very narcissistic. We believe that we have domain over the earth. We believe that it is our inherent entitled right to live beyond our means, to live, to consume beyond what is actually healthy for the environment and for people in third world countries. We feel entitled to it. We don't even question it. It is that ingrained, and because we have justified it as men deserve domain over the earth, instead of we belong to the earth belongs to us. And that is so narcissistic when you think about it. And look what is happening. Y'all, we have unintegrated shadows so wide that we have now projected them on a macrocosmic level, and that should scare us. That's basically a whole other sermon, but I cannot just leave you hanging because I know some of you are squirming with the idea of what darkness may be lurking in you, in you, in you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have a surprise. Brad, give me a drum beat. Matt, can I get some rock and roll lighting? Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Shadow Challenge 2019! Okay. What is Shadow Challenge 2019? Well, I'm so glad that you've asked. Cue slide. Shadow Challenge 2019 is when my fellow brave shadow hunters ask 5 people who know them the most intimately to please tell me 5 character traits or behaviors that I exhibit, but may be blind to, that you believe are not serving my highest good. You can find a digital copy of this challenge at alchemistmovement.org/shadow. So here's the thing. Can you really do it? I don't know, can you? Does the fate of the world depend on it?
Yes.
Yes. Now here's the thing. 90% of the people in your life, if you were to ask them this question, if you asked your friend to tell you 5 things that you might be doing that they think you're unconscious of that are toxic, essentially, it will trigger them because they will then project onto you that they cannot fathom someone telling them about them. So then they will either A, not be able to answer it, 2, lie about it, or Z, just completely sugarcoat everything. So there are anonymous feedback surveys. You can't get out of this, you guys. I mean, I'm not forcing you, but I am controlling how you feel about it with my tone. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is, if anonymity is a problem, look at all I did was Google collect anonymous feedback, and I got all this stuff. There's all kinds of apps for it now too. SurveyMonkey, this is on the website too, so I have it all laid out for you. Deep down, your friends have been dying to point these things out to you. And I know some of you are gonna do it hoping that they do it, because you've got some things to say to them too. But that would be doing things with agenda. Giving in order to get. Can't fool a fooler, you guys. Okay, so here's my disclaimer. Just because they write it down, so let's say you get a friend to actually do this for you. Disclaimer, 2 disclaimers. 1, just because they write it down does not mean it's true. Okay, don't freak out. some of you are going to be opening Pandora's box. Okay, so just because they write it down does not mean it's true. You'll know there's something there if it triggers you. I did not have evil laugh in my script. That was totally raw in the moment. Second disclaimer. Don't let the annoyance that will inevitably come when they tell you something that is so clearly them. Because that is going to happen, okay? It's going to happen, but that's how the shadow works. When people, the metaphysics of the shadow is that you can't see something in someone else unless it's inside of you too, so they are likely to tell you something that is also true of them. And all you get to say is what?
Thank you.
Is thank you. Just remember, it only matters if it triggers. And you aren't allowed to defend, deny, or blame. If you have a friend that is actually brave enough to help you with this project, the only thing you get to say is thank you. So now the question is, what the hell do you do with this information? First you cry, alone, so no one feels bad. And second, you come to my shadow workshop. Cue slide, there it is. Shadow Challenge 2019 Integration Workshop. At this workshop, I will teach you not only how to integrate the information that comes up, because it's not always what you think it is, okay? Just because they say it doesn't mean it's something you actually do, it just means it's something that you've at least judged. I don't want to do it right now, we'll be here all night. So you're going to do the challenge, you're going to come, I'm going to teach you what to do with the information, and then I'm going to take you even deeper. Oh yeah, I'm going to teach you how to find your shadow so that you don't need other people to show it to you. Because that is how we get free, my friend. It is time to wake up. It is time to see the role that we are playing in the toxicity that has taken over the earth. And we know it's toxic, but we are so afraid of being the perpetrator that we have made ourselves the victim. And the story is never going to end unless we switch the matrix. We got to go deep into the back end of the computer and change the programming. So we have to stop manifesting these enemies into our lives. The second that we can integrate the shadow as an individual and as a culture, all of the people that we've manifested to show us the mirror can go away. How does that sound? All right, y'all want to take this into a guided meditation? All right, so Professor Dayleva, play me something toxic. Close your eyes. All of you. Do it. Consensually. You don't have to. This is a guided meditation. This is the portion of the show we call alchemy. It's very powerful. It's actually a chance for you to go into your subconscious mind and do some energy work. So right now I just want you to take a deep breath, uncross your body, breathe very deeply. I want you to imagine all of the masks that you wear, and I want you to watch them slide off into the ground as they dissolve. Maybe you wear 20, maybe it's just 3, but a mask is a mask. And right now, as I stand before you maskless, I give you permission to allow yours to dissolve as well. And when you find that you have no more masks, I want you to allow yourself to dissolve backwards into the back of the room, into a vortex opened in the lobby that drops you into the center of the earth in the middle of a forest. You find that you are wearing the clothing of a hunter or a huntress, and on your back is a quiver filled with arrows. You are in the center of a forest, surrounded by trees. On 5 of these trees, spread out so that each one ends up forming a pentagram, is a mirror. So out of all these trees, 5 of them have a mirror hanging on them. And they are spread out like a pentagram in the center of this forest. And you walk to one of the points on the pentagram. And as you approach the first mirror, you see the face of a person who you believe is toxic. Could be someone you know personally. It could be a political leader. It might not even be a face you recognize. But you take a look, and you take the one main thing that you judge about them, and you put it into your heart as a judgment on yourself. With grace and love and gratitude, you say thank you to who or what you saw in the mirror, and you walk to the next mirror. And as you approach the mirror, you see another reflection. It may not even be a human that you see. It could be a snake or an eel or some kind of energy or being that you have judged as bad. And you take that judgment and you put it in your heart and you say thank you. Thank you, thank you. And you continue to the third mirror. And as you approach, you ask Spirit if you're feeling brave to take you deeper, to show you an even darker shadow, someone from your past. Someone who's betrayed you, who's harmed you. And you take a judgment that you have decreed over them, about them. And you take that judgment and you put it into your heart. And you say thank you. Thank you, thank you. And continue on to the fourth mirror. You can tell Spirit you feel good at the level you're at, or if you're feeling brave, you can ask Spirit to take you even deeper. Show me my greatest shadow. Show me my shadow. And as you approach, you look at that mirror and you judge it. And you take that judgment that you have deemed of the thing you're seeing in the mirror and you put it in your heart. And then you say thank you, and you continue on to the last and final mirror in the pentagram. And as you approach, you see yourself, and it may be weaving in and out of another image, but ultimately you are seeing the blending of your greatest enemy and yourself. And you take the toxicity that you deem to be inside of them and you put it inside your heart. Then you say thank you. Thank you, thank you. And you walk to the center of the pentagram. You take out one quiver and you spin in a circle, asking Spirit to stop on the mirror that was most important to your personal growth right now, and you shoot, allowing the quiver to shatter the mirror, remembering the toxicity that that person was here to show you. And as you leave here tonight, you leave with the information that you are them. Ladies and gentlemen, after the show tonight, I will be in the green room, the cry room, right behind the sanctuary. I will be engaging in confession meetings. If you would like to integrate your shadow tonight, you may walk in silently, one at a time, and confess one piece of your shadow to me. I will simply smile, tell tell you that I love you, say thank you, and then you can leave. And that is it. Totally optional. I bless the rest of the show, and I bless all of your hearts for being here tonight. Amen.
From ancient Greece. After the Titan War, Zeus, victorious from battle, decided to take a wife. His first wife was named Themis, and Themis was the goddess of justice. Now, she may have been the only goddess of justice in the Greek pantheon, but she certainly wasn't the first goddess of justice. In Roman theology, there was Justitia, and in Egyptian theology, there was Maat, who's most notably known for greeting recently deceased mortals on an open plain with her scales. And she would rip out the hearts of mortals, and she would weigh them on her scales against one feather plucked from her head. And if your heart was equal or lighter to this feather, you got to step forward into the afterlife and live in bliss. However, if your heart was heavier than her feather, which seems a little shaming and a little judgmental, then you would immediately be eaten by a gigantic monster and you would spend all of eternity in duat. Which doesn't sound like a good time. Now, Themis was the personification of the idea of divine justice. And she and Zeus had many children, and one of the children that they gave birth to was named Dike. And Dike was the living embodiment of earthly justice. There suddenly became a separation between divine and earth justice, and Dike lived among the humans. And when she did, Greece experienced unparalleled peace and prosperity in the golden and silver ages of Greek civilization. But unfortunately, our story takes a little bit of a turn, because greed began to enter into the minds and hearts of mortals, and Dike, enraged by what she saw, fled into the sky, and it launched Greece into the Bronze Age, an age known for disease, war, and famine. That was the day that justice left this earthly coil. Now, this next part is a little debatable, even though we're all talking about mythology and it's really debatable, all of it. But this next part is a little debatable. Our modern representation of Lady Justice, a woman standing with a blindfold, holding a sword and scales, is actually inspired by Dike herself. With the blindfold meant to impart the idea of impartiality, that the law applies to everyone no matter who you are. She carries a sword because justice is swift and often final. And then she carries scales in her hands to reflect balance. That in a proceeding, what we are looking for is the argument that carries more weight. Now, the reason why I wanted to start with this story is because we often use words, phrases, and symbols without knowing their origin and without knowing their true meaning. And no one is more guilty of this than moi. And I often get into trouble because I speak very quickly, and I love my descriptor words, and I also love the rule of three, so I'll just rattle out 3 descriptors, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, I don't think that word means what you think it means. And then there's the split personality of I am sure I'm right, with that little bit of seed of doubt that goes, no, it's like, I mean, it's like basically the same thing. I mean, it's kind of, shut up. No one asked you. And this is true with justice. Now, to preface, I am not involved in the justice system. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer. And so my reflections tonight are simply coming from my observations. You can feel free to disagree with me the entire time, and that is okay. Because my intention for tonight is to start a conversation about justice, because I think when we talk about justice, we're not actually talking about justice. My only experience with justice very recently is I got called for jury duty. Oh, my Lanta. I had dreaded that day since I was eligible, and that little placard came in the mail, and I didn't want to go, and then first they tell me that this is my day, and then I get off of work, and then they cancel the day I'm supposed to come, and they're like, oh, just come next week, like I have nothing better to do with my life. So then I get that day off of work and I go down and I sit in a room with a bunch of other people and it's very uncomfortable and we don't know what to do and everyone's looking around like maybe somebody has been through this before, and then they shuffle you into another room, the courtroom, and then you get a judge, and our judge was very lovely. He was very nice, he was very funny, I appreciate it, and they start calling you. And everyone collectively is going, please don't pick me, 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 please don't pick me. And I realized I had no idea how jury picking went. Because I was like, oh my gosh, great! They picked all these numbers and none of them are me. Whoo! I am saved! And then people started getting dismissed. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? But why are they leaving? Why are you calling another number? Why are you calling another number? And I made it, there was like 7 of us left, and I didn't get chosen. It's divine intervention right there. God clearly had a different plan for me. That was not jury duty. But while this was all happening, I kind of felt a little mad with myself. Because this is supposed to be one of the most profound and one of the most direct ways that we as citizens get to participate in the justice system. And I was actively wanting to get out of it, and so was everybody else. Now, that did not change my mind from skipping my way out of the courtroom, nor did I volunteer, but I had a moment of reflection and a moment of looking at my shadow side that I did not want to be in that courtroom. That is really my only experience with the justice system. So again, everything I'm about to share with you, you can feel free to disagree. You probably have a different experience, and that's great, because what we want is a fruitful dialogue. We want a fruitful discourse. I'm not right. I'm just here with a stage and a microphone with some ideas and some thoughts that I wanted to share with you all. And I hope that you come talk to me afterward and share your thoughts and ideas, even if it's you're completely wrong and stupid and I cannot believe that you just wasted our time for the next 15 minutes. So, in order to get on the same page, I think we first need to define the word justice.
I thought so.
A little overactive, Siri. Hey, welcome to the stage, Siri. Siri, would you please define justice? This is your moment, Siri. You're ruining this for me. Let's try this again. Oh, what can I help you with? No. What is the definition of justice?
Just behavior or treatment.
Thank you, took it long enough. No, I do not! I bet you Alexa would not have done this. So, Siri, in her infinite wisdom, defined justice as just behavior and or treatment. That is super helpful. Siri goes on to say that a justice might be a figure, like a judge in a courtroom. It also might mean fairness, that justice is equated with fairness. And when I heard this, after much arguments with Siri, when I heard this, I was immediately reminded of the children that I work with in the school system. So, I work for an organization called Sierra Arts Foundation, and I teach theater. And I have a bunch of 1st and 2nd graders right now, and they are absolutely adorable. I see you. I see you. One of them's in the audience right now. This is great, you're gonna love this. So 1st and 2nd graders have a very clear understanding of what is fair and just, especially as it relates to them, because they are the center of their own universe. And when I go into classrooms, classrooms and I teach theater and I share different games and exercises, I'm always looking for volunteers. And so when I ask for volunteers, hands raise high into the air. But unfortunately, I can only take 3. And I take 3 brave souls on stage with me. And unfortunately, the rest do not get picked. And what unfolds is nothing short of sheer madness. Because what I hear is a cacophony of voices and interpretive body movements that all go, why do I never get back? The humanity! Life is so unfair! Now, when I heard this, I was immediately transported to when I was a child. And I also had a very clear understanding of what was fair and what was just. And I also remember crying to the heavens and at my parents that it was so unfair what was happening to me right now. And in that moment, like a Pavlovian response, I almost turned to my class and said, well, you know what? Life's not fair. But I caught myself. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm becoming my parents. It has officially and finally happened. Because whenever I would cry that something was unfair, my parents would say over and over and over and over again that life isn't fair. And they would drill that into me over and over and over again until that line became the punchline to a joke I never told. And that was my first understanding of what justice was. That life wasn't fair. That you're not gonna always win. You're not always gonna get what you want. And sometimes bad things happen to good people and there's no good reason why. People get sick. People die. People are killed. And that stayed with me for a very, very long time. Now, my understanding of justice shifted as I got older and I gained more experience. So I'm just going to give you 3 examples of the different iterations of justice in my life. So when I got a little bit older, justice was something that was outside of my control. It was something that some fantastical creature did to reward the righteous and to punish the wicked. Like Santa Claus. Or God. You know, like either. And so therefore justice was tied to what I did. If I was a good little boy, if I did good deeds, I would be rewarded for the good things that I did. And I had an expectation that if I was good, good things would happen to me. Imagine my surprise the day that I learned that that was not the case. So then, my perspective on justice shifted a little. Suddenly, my knowing of justice had a toxic understanding because I then seized control of justice. Justice was in my hands to wield as I saw fit. And justice was all about revenge and retaliation. I call this my middle school and high school phase. Because let me tell you, no one can give a cold shoulder like an indignant gay man. I had it down to a fine art and system. I could socially ostracize you with one look from across the room. If you hurt me, I'll hurt you back. If you punish me, I'll punish you back. That's fair, right? That's balanced, right? Well then, justice shifted again. And suddenly, spirituality came into my life. And spirituality actually complicated my notions of what justice was, because once again, justice became something that was outside of my control, but allowed me to sit on a throne of righteous morality and stare down at everyone else. And I would throw around phrases that I didn't understand the meaning to, like, karma is a biatch, and she's coming for you. I don't gotta do nothing. I just gotta sit here and wait. Because let me tell you what I know for absolute certain in this life. You're gonna get your comeuppance. And I can sleep at night because it's not coming from me, it's coming from above. So it didn't matter if I had to wait a day, a year, or 20 years. Karma, like a shadow in the night, was going to steal you away and punish you. That is not what karma means at all. But once again, karma is a large concept that we truly don't understand, and yet we throw it around so casually as if we do. My talk tonight, if you're wondering, we finally gotten to this portion of the presentation. Justice is a dirty word. And I don't mean dirty like raunchy, although Lady Justice wears a blindfold and she carries a lot of props, so you know she's into that freaky stuff. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. No, I mean justice is a dirty word because it's muddled and confusing, and it's convoluted, and because it is these things, at times, it is problematic. Justice is a dirty word because it's a hypocritical paradox that makes it feel like it is soiled and corrupted. Justice is a dirty word because it seems unfair. Like, great, Justice wears a blindfold for impartiality, but what is Justice missing by wearing that blindfold? Is she not seeing the big picture and what or who falls through the cracks and right underneath her nose? Great, Justice is carrying scales. What are we trying to balance? And is that actually what we're trying to achieve, balance? Or is balance a fool's errand? Because really what we should be seeking is wholeness and a return to that wholeness. Justice is a dirty word because it often focuses too much on individualism and it ignores the fact that we are complex, multifaceted beings. We are hearts and we are minds and we are bodies and we are histories and we are communities and we are nature herself. Justice is a dirty word because it focuses on the present, what is happening right now, and it really doesn't take into context the history, which we know is not over. We know that systemic institutions of oppression exist still to this day. The colonization that claimed these lands, slavery, and various economic and gender practices that promote isolation and suffering are not over and are not gone, even if the laws around them have changed. Justice is a dirty word. Even when I moved in my professional life into the field of social justice, I still didn't have a grasp or understanding of what the word justice meant. But now I was fighting and advocating for it, and I fought for it in a multitude of arenas, including social justice, reproductive justice, economic justice, employment justice. And I thought justice meant change. I thought justice meant equity, and it meant inclusion. But what is just about working hard for a bill that in the next election cycle will just be overturned and individuals' rights stripped away? What is just about your opposition using debased moral authority, fear tactic, propaganda, and lies to achieve their end? What is the justice in that? Where is the just in members of your own community perpetuating and sustaining other systems of oppression and using that oppression and violence against fellow members of their own community? Where is the justice in that? And I began to notice, like our beginning story of Themis and Dike, that there was a separation between spirituality and spirit and this justice work. It didn't seem like the two went together. Because while I was in the social justice field, there was no time, there was no place, and there was no opportunity for personal healing. That was not what was important. We were talking about life or death. We were talking about people who were incarcerated in cages and had zero rights. We were talking about people who were literally dying. There was no time. There was only how hard could you push and how hard could you go in any given day. Because when we said it was life or death, we meant it. Because it was. And you didn't matter. It wasn't about you. And so what happened? We had a bunch of wounded healers and wounded leaders that were creating practices and protocols and organizations and systems and cultures from that place of toxicity. No wonder so many individuals who work in the nonprofit arena, and this is not just specific to the nonprofit arena, but it's no wonder that so many people in the nonprofit arena experience disease, disillusionment, burnout, because they are killing themselves, often for a cause that they've lost connection to and they've lost sight of. Because there's often not support in that system for them to do this work. And when I left social justice work behind, because I was one of those individuals who was sick, who was depressed, who was just running off the fumes of their fumes to get through another day, because I believed in the work so much. But I left. And when I started moving into more spiritual circles, I noticed that in spirituality, justice is often absent. That justice is often missing. Because in those organizations, we have wounded leaders and wounded healers that ignore or break the law without regard to whom they are hurting. Because they believe in some capacity that they are above the law. Or better yet, leaders and organizations that have removed themselves from the day-to-day myriad of human existence because of some principle or some practice that says we must maintain neutrality and we must disengage from the earthly things that are happening. Let us not concern ourselves with that. Let us not get our hands dirty with that. And instead offer up antiquated rules and practices that have no relevancy in a modern context, or better yet, overused in cliched tropes like thoughts and prayers. And you just need to focus on the light. that at times seem pretty condescending and often at other times extremely harmful. Now, I am not advocating for a reunion between church and state. They can keep themselves separated, that is absolutely fantastic. But I think there are practices and principles in both that could be combined to create a different path. A different path that promotes healing over punishment. A better path that promotes the wholeness and wellness of the individual and the community in which they find themselves in. That there is a different way, there is a better way. When I was doing the research for this sermon, what I got over and over and over again is the justice system is broken and there's no way we could possibly fix it. And it feels like that sometimes. Sometimes it feels like that every single day. As of today, in 2019, there have been 289 mass shootings. That is more than the number of days we have had in 2019. And we have had 338 people killed and over 1,200 people injured. This year, we have seen 19 transgender brothers and sisters murdered violently. And women of color are the disproportionate group of that 19. Where is the justice? Where are we talking about it? Last year, ICE detained 400,000 people. And those individuals lived in conditions where they experienced daily abuse and didn't have basic sanitary conditions or any semblance of safety or access to legal counsel. Where is the justice in that? How is that just behavior? How is that fair treatment? Because right now, there's one very important thing that we are ignoring, and that is our history. The history makes us uncomfortable. The history makes us come to terms with our actions. The history provides context for wounding and trauma. And trauma, when it is held onto, breeds isolation and separation, and those oppressive institutions use tools of isolation and separation to keep us from resisting, to keep us from coming together, to keep us from enacting any kind of change. We cannot ignore our history. We cannot ignore the atrocities that have happened. We cannot ignore the systems that are still in place. We need to name them. We need to identify them, and not just once, not when it's convenient, not when you're in a workshop, not when you're among a group of like-minded individuals. We need to identify it every single day. I was reading an article about how call-out culture, which is kind of the new method of identifying and naming, is actually counterproductive to the healing and forgiveness work that we're intended to do. And the author actually suggested that we practice something called calling in. And I love it because it reminded me of my shamanic teachings, where we call in the ancestors, and we call in the spirits, and we call in our guides, and we call in everyone that is there to serve for the highest good. And that's what it reminded me of, is can we call each other in to a circle of peacemaking that promotes wholeness and understanding, that moves away from justice being a dirty word because we associate with things like retaliation and vengeance, and instead see justice as equanimity and empowerment and uplifting and a returning to oneself. So what do we do now? This is always my favorite part, because we spend a lot of time talking about things aren't great. And it looks like things might get a little bit worse before they get better. And no one wants to go to a talk and nobody wants to go to a sermon where I talk for about 95% of the time and then I wrap it up super quick with some sort of vague niceties about love and togetherness and, oh, we should do this. I have done that before, but I wanted to provide a clear and concrete path. And again, I'm not saying this is the right path, but this was a path that resonated with me when I was looking. So there's two parts to the path. One, Reverend Levity talked about. That's our personal healing. That's our inner work. That is the time that we take for ourselves, for space, for breath, for stillness. The time that we take to work on ourselves, because we are the most important thing. And we do know that our personal healing will reverberate out and not only impact our personal circles, but our communities in the world at large. However, here's the trap. I find this especially among spiritual folks, and this is where a swift kick of justice needs to come in. You can become trapped there. You can engage in an endless cycle of personal transformation and personal work, but you don't live in a vacuum. You are not isolated. And we all participate and perpetuate and support these systems of oppression. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to remove myself, I'm just going to focus on me. Because sometimes we say that the personal work is the most uncomfortable, but I think the community work is the most uncomfortable. And it can get real nice staying here, naming ourselves, focusing on ourselves, and doing this inner work that you may never leave. But we do not live in isolation. We are hearts, we are minds, we are bodies, we are communities, we are histories, and we are nature herself. And so that brings us to my second point. I came across something called restorative justice. Now, this was a term that I've heard a couple of different times in a couple of different contexts, but I didn't do any lengthy research into it. Now, restorative justice is about bringing to the table offenders, victims, and parties in the community that were impacted by the incident to have a collective conversation about what healing, wholeness, and moving forward looks like. And in restorative justice, there's 4 key values that they emphasize. One is the encounter. So if parties are willing, this is all voluntary, the victim, the offender, and the families of both the victim and the offender, as well as different community leaders, sit at the same table and have a conversation. I love this idea, because so often when we're talking about justice, I have found that what people want is to be seen and heard. What they want is to be acknowledged. They want that their pain is acknowledged as real and as valid, and that what happened to them was real. And being able to sit at the same table and have that conversation can do so much to begin that path of healing and that path toward forgiveness. Because restorative justice moves away from punishment, punitive damages, and instead focuses more on the harm that was done in the incident, to gain a greater understanding of how the offender's actions impacted not only their victim, but their families and the community at large, to hopefully inspire a sense of empathy. The second part is amends. So collectively, the group works together to create an action plan of accountability for how the offender is going to clean up their mess and how the offender is going to make amends. This is powerful because it creates a system of personal responsibility specific to the harm and specific to the action. There's nothing more powerful than sitting across from an individual that you have done harm to, owning up to your mistakes, saying that you caused them harm, and then also asking, how can I clean up my mess? What are the steps that I can take to repair the relationship within ourselves and the relationship in a broader community? The third part is empowerment. So now that we have our action plan set, and personal responsibility is established, and accountability is at the forefront of that action plan, now both victim and offender are connected with community resources and support networks that aid and assist them both in their healing. When I read this, there was a little bit of difficulty, because often when we talk about justice, there may be a feeling that the offender doesn't deserve any healing, that the offender doesn't deserve any resources, that the offender deserves to be isolated and separated. But those are the tools that institutionalized systems of oppression use to create that disconnection within ourselves and within one another. And then the last part is inclusion. So, in this circle, there are individuals, families of the offender, families of the victims, community leaders, different officials in the court system, and they all work together to talk about what reintegration looks like. Because that's the ultimate goal, right? Healing and reintegration and a return to wholeness. Now, is restorative justice perfect? No. Is restorative justice suitable for every single crime in every single situation? No. Does restorative justice still have some problematic elements and things that it ignores and doesn't do? Absolutely. And I'm not saying this is the only solution. I'm not saying this is the way out. What I am saying is I liked the idea. I liked the idea of marrying spirit and justice together into a path that provided an avenue for forgiveness, for individuals to find their voice, for individuals to be seen and heard, to be able to tackle these issues in a broader context, to include the histories, to include how it impacts beyond the individual and impacts us all on a greater scale. But before any of that, before we can try to repair a broken justice system, before we can attempt to do anything to mend and heal the corrupted soilness that we find ourselves in, we have to get real clear about what justice means and how we define it. We have to get real clear about what it is exactly that we are looking for justice to provide. Is it a path for revenge and retaliation, or is it a path toward wholeness and forgiveness? We have to get real clear about our personal values, not only as individuals, but collectively as a society, to know when those values have been violated and betrayed, so we can give voice to that betrayal and point it out. We have to get very clear about the word justice. Otherwise, it'll just be the blind leading the blind. Thank you.
Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Father, Father, there's no need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer it. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love in here today. Painted lines, painted signs, punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see. Oh, what's going on? 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 Tell me what's going on? 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 Father, Father, everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us simply 'cause our hair is long? You know we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Oh, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Oh, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Tell me what's going on? What's going on? Oh, what's going on? 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 Hey. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to be consistent when you're standing at a distance. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing and there's no way we ever could. See, everything is going wrong with the world and those who lead it. It feels like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, it's hard to be the system when you're standing at a distance. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Oh, we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. Ladies and gentlemen, we're the Thank you to CSL for housing us, all of the volunteers and activists at CSL to make our show possible, and all of you for coming out tonight. Thank you so much. If you received a free ticket and you want to donate tonight, you can do so at the merch booth. We've got one show left this year, December 28th. We would love to see you there, ladies and gentlemen. We are the Alchemists. We love you very much.